you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com, SecretOfTheInternet.com. It's time to tackle one of the more significant issues that the country is facing today, and that is the issue of healthcare and health insurance. And you'll notice I said those two things differently because they are completely different things, and that is one of the problems that we're facing when it comes to the healthcare discussion in this country today. There's a lot of talk because of the Affordable Care Act, because of the new ACHA or whatever the Ryan Care was called, which was just as much of a shit show as Obamacare, just in different ways. I'm actually thankful that that didn't pass. I'm hoping they will come up with better solutions. And the main point of this video is to explain that no matter what the conversation is, the vast majority of people don't realize the true issues that are facing the healthcare industry in this country. Everyone wants to talk about healthcare as being a coverage issue when that's not the problem. The only issue with healthcare in our country today is a cost issue. Now, some people will try to argue that, oh, we need a universal payer system because the government can then negotiate as a huge entity, talking about massive contract size basically when it comes to insuring and treating everyone in the country. They can have better negotiations with the insurance companies, blah, blah, blah. That's not the issue. The issue is here, the main issue with healthcare is that the medical industry, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, whatever, all different sorts of businesses involved in medical treatment, are allowed to do things and use business practices and pricing structures and things like that that are literally illegal for you or I to use if we ran a hot dog stand or a mechanic shop or anything like that. And that is causing a massive, massive increase in the cost of medical care in the United States. You can see this when you compare it to areas that are not involved in the whole national insurance scam, like veterinary medicine, even plastic surgery many times. You have surgeries that are no less involved than any other sort of necessary surgery, like an appendectomy or something like that. There's no more work involved to do a lot of these cosmetic procedures. Yet you can do those for several $1,000s, maybe $5,000 to $20,000, whereas some overnight hospital stay for some minor surgery that you needed, have a gallbladder removed or something, that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even over $100,000. They're charging you $50 for an aspirin, $50 plus for each pair of latex gloves that the hospital uses. It's absurd, and it should be illegal. And in many cases, it sometimes is illegal for some of these practices. They're just not enforced. The main problem, too, is that people focus on insurance when they're really talking about health care. Insurance is something that you are paying what has to be more money over a certain time period and than it would be to pay for these events, at least on an aggregate. Some people will end up getting a deal from the insurance company. But the bottom line is if it costs you if it costs you less to pay the insurance company than it did to just pay for the events, insurance companies would be out of money. And let me explain that. The only way you can figure out the cost of insurance, of what it has to be for a company to exist, and Carl Denninger has gone over all this, and including this formula, which I'm about to share to you on his website, market-ticker.org. But the only way you can figure out how an insurance company can stay in business is to take the probability of an event, multiply it by the cost that that event occurs, and then add a profit for the insurance company. Anything less than that, and the insurance company is paying you. And so even when you take something like maybe the government is running this and that you don't need to operate at a quote-unquote profit, it still has expenses incurred with running its operation that go above and beyond the cost of simply compensating for the event. So if you have a car accident and it costs $5,000 to fix your car or whatever, that's the cost that's how much it costs to fix the car, whether or not you're paying for it. Doesn't matter who's paying for it. That's how much it costs to hammer out the dents, put in the filler, repaint it, all that stuff, get any new parts you need. That's how much it costs. Whether you're paying it, whether the insurance company paying it, that's the cost of the event, the accident. So the insurance company has to be able to have money on top of that to be able to pay for their operations, their employees, their websites, all that stuff. And also most times they're taking a profit because they are a business. So if the event already has happened, the probability is 1. It's happened. You know that this has happened, so you know what the cost is going to be. Thus, it will always be cheaper to go outside of the insurance to do this on your own. So this is one of the problems with pre-existing conditions and going through like insurance and then affecting the same pools as people who haven't had anything done to them yet or happened to them yet, where the probability is some percentage less than 100%. So the whole idea of insurance is that you realize that you're probably going to end up paying more, at least on average as a group. Most of you will end up paying more for, car repairs basically through your insurance premiums than you would directly for car repairs over a 30-year period, let's say, if you didn't have insurance. The idea being that you're just ironing out the variance, because you know that you can pay $60, $75 a month for your insurance premium, and that is a lot easier to budget for than just waiting and hoping that you don't have a $6,000, a $10,000, a $15,000 bill pop up all at once. You realize that over a lifetime, paying a $70 or $75 insurance premium every month is going to cost you more than if you just wait and pay for these events on their own. For most people, I'm talking about a population as a whole. Obviously, there are some outlier situations. So if you realize you're one of those outlier situations, if you realize that your risk profile is much higher than they think it is, then obviously it would make sense to go to the insurance company. And that's what the pre-existing people are doing. The problem is they're forcing everyone else to cover these expenses, because with the way the pricing is done, like I talked about, the way they're allowed to do things that no other businesses are, they can't afford it. People with pre-existing conditions can't afford it. And the government can't afford to pay for all this stuff either, so they're having to force people to pay for coverages that they don't need. But all of that's nonsense, and it's a symptom of the original issue, which is, like I said, this is a cost issue, not a coverage issue. If you fix the issues related to cost, the vast majority of people in the country would not need health insurance or would not have health insurance. You could get an MRI, this was also from Carl Denninger reporting this, in Japan for like $200. In the United States, it can cost, someone was just quoted on his forum, $5,000 for the same MRI. Now, most of the time, people's insurance pay for this, and they have to because individuals can't afford these things. You could literally fly to Japan, get an MRI, and fly back and have spent less, probably half of what they're charging for that MRI on the open market with no insurance. There's some sort of scorpion antivenom that is like $500 in other countries in South America and Mexico. In the US, they charge something like $40,000 a dose for this exact same antivenom. So keep in mind, something that would be, ouch, that hurts, $500, becomes something that could be literally crippling debt. Or at the very least, you're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50 times more costs. And yeah, ridiculous. 500 times more costs maybe. And this is in every aspect of medical care. Just like I talked about with the aspirins, over the counter you could pay a quarter maybe for a pill. You're paying the hospital, you're paying dozens of dollars. Same with a pair of latex gloves. Like, shit, do you need me to bring these in for you if this is so expensive for you? But they're bilking the insurance companies or through the government's bailing them out by forcing everyone to have to get coverage and things like that, and even get fined when they don't and all that other nonsense. So all we really need to do is control the costs. There may be some people in that situation, even when the costs are normal, that have such heinous pre-existing or expensive conditions that the government would need to help them for most people to feel comfortable with that situation. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. We're talking about legitimate things. The problem is that now if you get a broken foot, a broken arm, a clean break, doesn't need surgery, there's absolutely no reason on earth why that should cost more than a few $100, let alone a few $1,000s. You can absolutely calculate the cost of an x-ray, the cost of the casting material, less than an hour or so of a doctor's time. These should be things that you should be able to go on a menu and look at exactly what it costs. You can do this in other countries. You can do this with some things online, like blood tests and stuff, but people don't even know you can do that. And you can get these blood tests for $50, $100, and take the results to your doctor that way. So this is all just to tell you that, like I said, the issue with healthcare in America is cost, not coverage. You would only need insurance for, if they fix the cost issues, you'd only need insurance for big outlier events. So when you got insurance, it would be just like with car insurance. It wouldn't be to fix the flat tires, which are the colds. It wouldn't be to fix the parking lot dings, or whatever, which are the broken arms, it would be, you know, I can pay for that. If that comes up, that's going to be $500. That's going to be $1,000. Even something like a surgery that you stay in hospital for a couple days, you know, maybe that'll be $20,000. So that's a lot of money, but it's not going to cripple someone for the rest of their life if an unexpected moderate surgery comes up. So even something like massive open heart surgery or really complex reconstructive surgery if you're in an accident, long-term ongoing care for cancer or massive hereditary or genetic diseases that you didn't know about that are going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars even with the pricing structure fixed. That's what insurance is for. It would be just like with house insurance and things like that. You don't call your insurance company when someone knocks a table over and it punches a hole in your drywall, because that's going to cost you $50 to replace it, or you can do it on your own. You call them when the place burns down and you need a new house, or it's the foundation collapses into a sinkhole or something like that. So you would be paying $25, $50, maybe $150 a month max, depending on your risk profile, for catastrophic coverage. And you know, it would really only apply to things that started costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more, which, if they fixed the pricing structure, would be fair few medical conditions. Let's be honest. There would not be that many things. Think about when you go to the vet, even things that are surgeries, complex surgeries that they're doing on multiple different species of animals and things like that. These are several $1,000s. They'll have like cataract surgeries, all sorts of bone surgeries, cancer treatments, and then people are like, oh my God, this is going to cost me $2,000. This complex surgery for my dog to replace his retinas or whatever for poor Fufu, and they do a GoFundMe. I need a GoFundMe because this is going to cost me $5,000. And I'm not saying that $5,000 isn't a decent chunk of money, and it may be out of reach for most people, but it is quite a different story from the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars even that humans are being charged to have these things done to them. Now, I understand there's a little bit more cost associated with that because of the level of care that they have to take, the addition of malpractice insurance, which is going to be a little higher, and just things like that. Yes, it's going to be more for humans, but the point is that they're doing the same work with most of the same equipment. It should not be hundreds, thousands of times more expensive. 5 times more expensive, okay, that makes sense maybe. But you're still talking about something being $10,000 instead of $100,000. And most of the time, the difference is even more extreme than that, especially when you're talking about things with a fixed cost that don't really have any chance of going outside of a range, like an MRI. Obviously, if you open somebody up, things could end up being a lot more complex than you originally expected, so it would be harder to quote an exact price, but you should always be able to have a baseline saying, this is what a standard procedure like this is going to cost, including these elements. This is the quote, obviously, if it includes any more element. And contractors do this work. They do this all the time. When they're doing like a repiping or any sort of work on a property, they can always give you a quote, even though there's also always a chance of extenuating circumstances. That's why it's a quote that includes certain things. The medical industry is no different, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. The dogs are going nuts. I gotta check this out. So until the government fixes the issues associated with the pricing, which would not be as hard as most people think, because they're not even looking at these issues. It would just be a simple fact of enforcing existing laws and then changing a few more maybe to actually make sure that these industries are treated like they should be. Until that happens, it doesn't matter what sort of healthcare bills or what sort of healthcare plans or insurance rules and coverages and exchanges. None of that matters, because that's not fixing the underlying issue. And if it's not fixed, then the medical spending, especially by the government, by people, will continue to massively inflate. And we've seen this over the last few decades. Look at medical spending over the last few decades and costs and how much has gone up. While technology is becoming increasingly more efficient, everything that we've had from the 70s and all this technology that we're still using in many medical procedures, obviously there's new technologies out there, but a lot of it's the same. All that stuff is cheaper and easier to make than it was. Everything should be more not profitable, but more affordable for the average person. And let's be honest, most medical treatment that the average person is going to need for any given time period is going to be using technology that's been around for decades most of the time. Most of the medical services that we're going to be getting are going to be things like antibiotics, doctor's labor, stitches, maybe a diagnosis, broken bones here, x-ray, maybe an MRI. This is stuff that should be getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Just like a smartphone now you can get for $100 for some models, maybe even less. And regular cell phones you can get for $10. And these were things that cost hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands when they were first invented. That stuff applies to the medical industry as well. And sure, the stuff on the technological fringes for the people who need the high-end, laparoscopic robotic surgeries, that stuff didn't exist years ago, and that's going to have more cost associated with it than the older technology. But those aren't necessary in most treatments, and even in the ones that are, the pricing is still being fooled with. It's not real. Market forces are not being allowed to take effect. Thanks for watching, guys. Spread the news on the real issue with health insurance, and I'll talk to you guys later.